Great everyone, dear friends, my name is Evgeny and you are on my YouTube channel. And today we have an analysis of a rather interesting and promising company, Skyworks Solutions, SWKS. Well, I wish you a pleasant viewing and we are begin. Skyworks Solutions is an American company founded in 1962, engaged in the design, development, production, and sale of semiconductor products. Skyworks Solutions' product portfolio includes power amplifiers, interface modules, and a RF product for mobile phones and wireless infrastructure equipment, amplifiers, demodulators, detectors, diodes, input modules, hybrids, and creates next-generation Wi-Fi routers, and many other. To list all the company's products seems to be a difficult task because its assortment is incredibly huge. Products of Skyworks Solutions, it is sold almost all over the world and is used in the automotive, cellular infrastructure, entertainment and games industry, aerospace industry, medicine, smartphones, tablets, and so on. What is more than an impressive list. But the most important thing is why Skyworks is the company of the future. It makes 5G equipment that is used in cars, business equipment, industrial equipment, and of course in the IoT or Internet of Things. And this will radically change our daily life. I think everyone understands why 5G is an incredibly promising technology, because it will allow the speeds and coverage of data transfer to go to a completely new level, in addition to the fact that our beloved YouTube will download videos faster and we will be able to download movies several times faster. At the same time, the entire network economy will change. The average transmission speed will increase 40 times, while the cost of delivery on the against will decrease 30 times, which completely turns the game around. Also, in addition to this, 5G will give development to such areas as unmanned vehicles and virtual augmented reality. In fact, what Facebook or Meta wants to do now. Everyone understands perfectly well that this is just an incredibly promising area of activity that will bring in hundreds of billions of dollars in the future. In turn, 5G will give a sharp acceleration to the Internet of Things. And who doesn't know, this is a way of exchanging information between several devices connected to a single network. It helps to collect, analyze, process, and transmit data without human intervention through software or application. With the help of special sensor group of devices interact with each other and perform different tasks. If you give a simple understandable example, then this is a smart home that will do almost all the functions itself. But the smart home is just the tip of the iceberg, because the Internet of Things will be used in manufacturing companies, in the healthcare, in the retail, in the energy industry, in the organization of traffic, and as for me, a very important area that with the help of the Internet of Things can work in a completely new way is logistics. In general, in the future, this technology awaits us everywhere, but with all due respect and all the prospects, this technology still has a drawback, namely so far it is poorly protected from the point of view of the possibility of hacking. So we understand that together with the active development of the Internet of Things and 5G technology, most likely the cybersecurity sector will also develop very strongly. So pay attention to it to If you are interested in analyzing this industry, I have a couple of very interesting companies in mind, right? Be sure if you want to see this. But returning to our company, I would like to say that it produces almost all the most necessary products for the Internet of Things and 5G. Therefore, with the development of these technologies, the company will earn a lot of money. In general, it is now increasing its income at a good pace. But according to analysis forecasts, the peak of the introduction of 5G technology and the Internet of Things will happen somewhere in 5 or 7 years. It is then that it's worth waiting for even larger increases in the revenue for the company. Well, let's get back to the company and let's look at the geography of Skyworks Solutions revenues. So, of course, the largest share is occupied by sales in the United States, namely 63% of revenues. Second place is China, 19.5%, followed by Taiwan with a share of 8%, South Korea with a share of 5%, Europe and other regions with a share of 4.5%. In general, the sales geography is quite good, and in principle, the company works with many emittent businesses such as Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, Samsung, Huawei, Google, and other. There is actually a problem in the breakdown of revenues. Well, it's not a problem, but rather a risk factor. The company received almost half of all its revenues from Apple, which means that Skyworks Solutions actually depends on the success of Apple giants' business development. Therefore, accordingly, if Apple goes badly, then Skyworks Solutions will have quite serious problem for some time. Of course, it will be able to find other customers. This is not a problem, but as a factor of such a risk, it still exists, and this must be borne in mind. Well, ending the geography of sales. In general, the sales structure would like to note that the company is actively expanding its foreign direction. That is, it's trying to develop its business in China, Korea, and other Asian countries that, as everyone knows, show pretty good growth rates. But another such risk in terms of geography can be the trade war between the United States and China, which doesn't have a very positive effect on Skyworks Solution business. This was, for example, when Huawei received sanctions, and as a result of which the sales of the company fell, and accordingly Huawei began to order less products from Skyworks Solutions. Therefore, indirectly, a trade war is a risk factor for our business. Well, now let's take a look at the total income of the company. Here I would like to immediately note that the company this year showed just an incredibly huge growth in its indicators. It increased its revenue by more than 50%, and the net profit almost doubled, certainly at incredibly huge growth. Of course, the company itself says that it is unlikely to be able to grow at such increasable rates, but an increase in revenue and profits by 20 or 30% annually in the next 5 or 7 years is predicted by both the company itself and analysts. Therefore, the rapid growth with the development of 5G technology, as mentioned earlier by the company, provide. The demand for its products is growing. We can see it in the longer dynamics. So if we look at the data starting from 2010, we will see how in recent periods both revenues and net profit of the company began to grow incredibly rapidly. Free cash flow also feels good. Well, now let's move on the balance sheet of the business here. In fact, I would like to say that the company shows an increase in both assets and liabilities, but assets grow much faster, as a result of which we can fairly good dynamics of an increase in the company net share capital, and the business debit is only 38%, which is in fact for such a large company very good values. That is, according to the balance sheet, we can safely say that the company feels confident. The business has no problem with debits, so it is also increasing its net share capital in general. The balance sheet is just wonderful. The capitalization of the company, by the way, is about $25 billion, which in my opinion is very good, because the company has a room to growth and it can easily grow several times. The company's marginality is very good. The business's margin is more than 29%, while the average for the industry doesn't even reach 10%. The return on equity and assets, it is also at very high values above the industry. In general, the company works very efficiently. This is certainly a huge plus. Well, now we are moving on the cost indicators of the company. Despite all its prospects, and of course there are very low cost indicators in the future. The price to earning indicators, which shows how many years the company takes to recap its value or capitalization with its net profit, is now at the level of about 17, which in principle is not bad, even for a company of value that shows a modest value of growth. But for a promising growth business, there are simply increasingly low cost indicators. The forward or forecast P ratio of the company is equal to 13 at all, which tells us about a very serious underestimation of the businesses. Well, we couldn't miss a very important thing in the company, like dividends. Yes, despite the fact that it's a growing business, it's pay dividends, and moreover, for this type of the companies, almost 1.5% on the invested capital. It's pretty good. Yes, this is not much, but the company spends only 20% on its dividends from its net profit, which is incredibly little. That tells us that the company can calmly increase the same dividends in the future. And if we also take into account that the company will increase its net profit, then in general there is nothing to talk about. Now the average annual growth of dividends for the company is about 15.5%, which is incredibly high, and the company has every opportunity to maintain such an increase in dividends. This will make it possible literally in a few years to turn the current dividend yield of 1.5% into a more substantial 2.5 or 3% what is current yield of the some dividend stocks. But this is not all the company actually does. Yes, not a super fast pace, but it still makes a buyback. And over the past 5 years, this does not happen so regularly, but still the general trend can be tracked. And this is a very positive moment, because our share in the company as investors increases. Well, by traditional, the last indicators that we are considering is historical growth in comparison with S&P 500. I repeat once again that historical data does not guarantee future prospects, but I think it is worth paying attention to this, how the company behaves and what profitability it shows. And so over the past 10 years, the company has shown a total return on capital. The total profitability is about 1100%. Agree, it's just incredible that the S&P 500 index for the same period of time not even reach 400%. It's still very good profitability, but the company is more than outperforming the index. Well, it's time to take stock. In fact, I find the company very interesting and promising. Of course, there are certain risks here, but as for me, they are small here. The company is growing, developing 5G technologies. It's actually being helped in this by a very promising businesses in general at the same time. It is priced quite cheaply, so I can safely put the company a rating of 9 out of the 10. Well, this issue came at the end. Thanks for watching, until the next time. Goodbye, guys.